to the Who Are You to Lead Anyway podcast, where we focus on the skills you need to navigate leadership and life. This is episode 81. And today I have a super cool surprise for you, which is a very rich conversation with the inspiring journey of Lauren Best. Lauren is a performance poet and innovative voice coach with over 15 years experience making an impact through music leadership. She is a creator and co-creator of 2 podcasts, which she will get into, and she curiously considers art and life to reveal what has unlocked success in her own journey of healing and growth. Within our conversation, Lauren shares valuable lessons that touch on the importance of aligning career with personal values and the impact of mentorship, how to balance responsibility with pursuing an impactful life, even in the face of challenges like grief and trauma, practical tips for managing stress, increasing productivity, and fostering creativity, strategies for improving self-perception, expression, and aligning work with broader desires, the significance of resilience and leadership in overcoming obstacles and achieving professional success. So whether you are just starting out or a seasoned professional, Lauren's experiences and insights promise to inspire and guide you on your own journey towards success and fulfillment. Enjoy. Hello, Lauren. It is so nice to see you. I'm so excited for all of the listeners and about what they are going to learn from our conversation today. So, listener, I met Lauren in early January as we both attended a Find Your Power experience at our local Chamber of Commerce. And Lauren is a voice coach. I'm going to let her share who she is, what she does, how she works with people. And I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit because this is what my experience of Lauren was. So as we begin the event, Lauren's task, as I know it to be, was to kind of warm up the room and kind of relax people, ease them into being in the space with one another. And she did this with such grace and confidence and was able to walk all of us as participants through this experience of doing some exercises that allowed us to warm up, connect with one another. And I thought to myself as I was standing there, oh my gosh, I have got to talk to Lauren. I have to have her on the podcast. I bet there is so many things that you as the listener can learn from her and her wisdom. So Lauren, with that, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do to the audience.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. It was so fun at that event. And I loved hearing you speak as well. And I loved doing the exercises that you took us through also. So it's so cool that we connected in that context, kind of both being in our, like, showing up on stage as professional practitioners, doing our thing, reaching people, and that we got to connect with that leading as well as the conversation between us. So as you said, I'm a voice coach. I'm a musician. I'm a performance poet. When I say voice coaching, people will either become afraid I'm going to ask them to sing, or actually some people get very excited and they say, oh, I love to sing. I've always loved singing, or I always wished that I could sing, or people will say, so do you do singing or do you do speaking? And I do work with people in both ways. I have a background as well as performance poetry. I've also facilitated lots of interdisciplinary arts experiences, so theater and media arts and writing, page poetry as well as performance poetry. I was Owen Sound's poet laureate for a couple years, so I did performance poetry and workshops and in lots of different contexts. And I'm also a podcaster. I have a show called the Infinite Improvisation Podcast, which I started a month after meeting my podcast partner, who's an American saxophonist named Steve Tressler. And so I started that in 2022, and I have a new show, Lauren's Best, and that's been lots of fun so far. That is still unfolding. So these days, as a voice coach, I especially help podcasters and business owners who want to use podcasting to help grow their businesses, but particularly people in the personal development space. And I think that almost all businesses this may be a hot take. I think almost all businesses are at least a little bit in the personal development space, because either they're developing their own people, either they're developing, I mean, maybe I can come up with a business that is a very technical example that seems very removed from improving the lives of humans. But really, most businesses exist to solve a human problem or to help a human experience. Like, businesses as a whole are created to help humans more or less. And there are people running the businesses. So whether we're developing the people in the business or developing people through the business, it's about connection and relationships. And that can be a relationship going inwards with ourselves, a relationship with kind of the creative creature that the business is, metaphorically, but also the relationships with customers and collaborators and listeners in the case of podcasters.
Absolutely. I love that. And there's so many just connections. I agree with you with as far as businesses go, like probably not much would exist without our human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And even if I think about AI, right, like AI will never replace the human. Mm-hmm. It'll never replace that human compassion, because that is a machine versus a human.
Mm. And the AI is only good or useful if it's helping us. I mean, it could be entertaining, it could be doing other things, but the way we're evaluating its effectiveness is, did this help me?
Did this help me? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So Lauren, I would love it if you could just share, we talked a little bit prior to like hitting record on this on this episode, and I would love to just, if you could share, you talked about your leadership journey. Mm-hmm. And you talked about like there have been some pivot points for you. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of give listeners a bit of an overview of like what got you to where you are today?
Yeah.
And what were the kind of pivot points along the way that you think they might find interesting, valuable, useful?
So I started off way back when in music leadership. I say doing the singer-songwriter thing. So I was writing songs, I was performing. It was a bit beyond that, because I was also doing some community organizing and things that weren't directly related to me as a singer-songwriter. But that's kind of where it all started. Some of that had to do with interactive theater and theater for social change as well. And I actually thought I was going to go to school for theater. Actually thought before that I was going to go to school for biosystems engineering, because I loved science and environmental sciences and solving problems, and and I loved learning. I really loved the learning process, and people would literally more or less say to me that that they assumed I would go to university, and almost as if it would be a waste for me to be in the arts when I was, like quote unquote, like so capable, or it had so many possibilities ahead of me if I, if I pursued a more traditional pathway. And also, I mean, not only is it implied, but it is also stated generally. People state to your face when you're in the arts things like, well, you must not be in it for the money, or, mm-hmm. or, people will say things implying that it is born of passion, that it's not very strategic, that there aren't good earning opportunities. And then on the other hand, there's this clear path of validation and of achievement through academics and through a more traditional career path. But I was making this album of music. So I'd written songs. I was making an album based on these songs I'd written. And I knew that I wouldn't want to record the songs I'd written in high school forever. Like, I was finishing up high school, recording them and thinking, okay, like this project, I need to wrap it up. I need to have it be done and out in the world. And I recognize that if I went to school for theater, which I know I kind of skipped over the part how I got from science to theater, but I had some really evocative, really moving experiences with community theater and community arts, working alongside professional cast members. So I got a glimpse as to what the professionals were doing, and I thought, okay, I'm getting good feedback from them. I see how they work. I'm in this semi-professional context, and I see how much I'm learning and growing, and maybe I basically realized I'm really enjoying myself doing this. And when I'm studying for tests and writing essays and working on all those traditional academic things, I'm kind of miserable a lot of the time. I noticed it was really isolating. but not just that. I recognized for a long time that the academic system is a game. It's kind of rigged. Like you can play within it, and no disrespect at all to people who are working within that system, to people who have even thrived in that system. Like, I was about to go down that road, and it's not a disrespect to that system, but I was already, even as a teenager, disillusioned. I was recognizing that how hard I worked, or the amount of satisfaction I got, or how effective I was being, or like how much I was making a difference, or, it didn't, like, getting good marks was a game where the end goal was getting good marks. And it wasn't really a game about learning, and like, marks were not a byproduct to learning. The types of things that gave me success in that system were not the types of things that actually nourished me as a human being. Nor were they showing like the actual learning, or like what might actually indicate success going forward. And it was like, I could see that it was not great for my mental health either. So I could kind of see ahead, okay, if I keep pursuing this and kind of competitively trying to achieve in this certain direction, I didn't see a lot of light at the end of that tunnel, other than
more
like
of it.
what I hoped way down I was like, okay, I have a lot of work ahead of me, and then eventually I can have even more work, and then I can achieve something and make a difference, hopefully. And hopefully have a steady paycheck, and hopefully at the end of all that work that seems almost pointless, that I guess I'll be learning from, then maybe I can make a difference. And I was in community arts. I was involved in community arts projects that were going out and making a difference really quickly. Like, we create a play, we go and tour it. It's having direct impact on people. Like, I saw my time being used effectively. And it was challenging, and there were risks, but I saw this much faster payoff for my efforts, but also that I was enjoying the process so much more. So I was like, okay, no more science. I'm just going to dive into the arts. I'm going to go to school for theater. By making that decision, that means I don't have to actually take that math course. I actually thought I would take a math course just for fun, and then I realized this is going to be a lot of homework. Okay, I'm really just going to focus on, and because I hadn't taken literature courses and things that I might be interested in, but I was so competitive. I was like, English lit, that's not going to help me. That's not going to help get me into the schools that I want to go to. I'm not going to do that. But once I decided I didn't have to be so achievement oriented, I realized, wow, okay, I can take that English lit course. I can take a creative writing course. I can take a drama course. And I found it very interesting that even though I didn't go to school for theater, that process changed my mindset, right? Because I had thought I was going in one direction, and then suddenly, by switching directions, these other possibilities opened up to me, like how much I gained from that English lit course that I never would have taken otherwise, And I still kind of wish I'd taken that math course, because it would have been a kind of cool challenge, but I do know for sure that dropping that math course and spending more time and energy really diving into, it was only high school English lit, but it was a very passionate teacher who'd really put together an interesting syllabus selection, and I could really dive in a way that I hadn't before, because I'd been so focused on memorizing semantic information and just getting those marks, where on the other hand, I was like taking some risks to write essays and really looking at ideas, and really, it was still very time consuming, but a whole other world that was really, really rich for me in terms of contemplating things from more philosophical and artistic and expression oriented, and analytical and strategic perspectives too. So, as I said, I was making this album, and I thought I better finish this off. So, okay, let's not go to university. Let's just focus on finishing this. So the long story short is I did finish the album. I did release the album. I had some really exciting milestones, or things that I didn't even necessarily expect to happen along the way. Some of the demo tracks were played on the CBC before the album was done. So I'd been at this conference, and I'd given a demo CD to Tom Power, who was hosting Deep Roots at the time. He hosts Q now, but he was hosting a bit of a smaller show at the time, and he played some of my tracks, and I thought, oh wow, that wasn't even done yet. That didn't even have all the instruments yet. It wasn't mastered. Interesting. Okay. And then when the album was done, I ended up having a track played on Definitely Not the Opera. And I thought, okay, I'm CBC famous. not CBC famous, but I just like, I'd driven and listened to the CBC and dreamed of having my name said on the CBC, my voice, And so there were some really, incredible high points. Also, during making the album, I worked with some really incredible musicians. And I realized that the music industry and success, or what people consider success in the music industry, especially as a singer-songwriter, especially as a young woman, especially in the music industry in Canada, if you're a singer-songwriter, you often end up in the folk world as opposed to in the pop world, which is a bit of a different industry, and sometimes a bit of both. But basically, I realized that this was a new game, and like the academic achievement game, that the ends were not necessarily going to justify the means, and that what I was told I needed to do to create success didn't make sense to me from a business perspective, from a life perspective, from a career perspective. There's also a lot of, oh, you're so young, it's so amazing kind of energy, which can be really nice, but people are kind of hoping that you can get big fast. They're not looking for you to like have your potential developed slowly. They're telling you to work really hard to develop your potential slowly, but there's this certain shininess around being a young person and especially around being a young woman. It's a different kind of energy. I'm not sure if it's that way in the academic world, in terms of like the rising star, the like prodigy sort of. And I was certainly not a prodigy in terms of like on how a music prodigy is described. I was probably the opposite in many ways. I still needed a lot of work. There are some people who are exceptionally talented when they are very young, usually in a very, very specific way, and it's often not doesn't have a lot of breadth or transferability, and people love that and they look for that and they want that. And even if you're looking for a longer build, people are kind of hoping you can do this quick rise. And I just saw the sacrifices that would be required. I saw that I'd have to go really far into debt and work with very little pay. And then the sort of the impression I was getting, and don't get me wrong, there are different aspects of the music industry, and this is how I ended up exploring other things, especially as a touring musician. There's this idea of like put in your time, like just go for it and grind out these long tours, and like which basically looks like maybe applying for grant funding, and maybe you get funding, but you still probably end your tour either in debt or maybe breaking even, but you've invested a tremendous amount of time and energy and resources in that. And I thought, wait a second, like, is this the career I'm really going after? Because I saw, okay, if you do all of that, the people who I saw in the industry who'd been doing it for 10 years, I thought, they've worked really hard. Isn't it amazing how many people they've connected with? And it seems like they're dealing with the exact same problems, just on bigger stages. Or with more people accountable to them, or with a bigger budget. But it didn't seem like there was, again, light at the end of that tunnel. It seemed like success meant a very similar struggle.
It's interesting. As you're sharing this story, I'm getting like there's such a connection between your experience and the like quote unquote corporate experience.
Okay.
Right? So someone comes in, shiny, bright star, like really intelligent, capable individual, can do lots of wonderful things. And they arrive on the succession plan, right? And we want them to progress fast. So we put them in experiences to create that dynamic. How are they going to do there? And as you said, like you're deciding all these things and you're watching these things around you, there's always a cost. right? So for you, it might have looked like applying for grants and things like that. And others in the corporate context is like, oh, well, now I'm taking the MBA, right? So
Yeah,
I
I'm
must do the
investing.
MBA. I'm investing, either I'm investing in myself or my employer is investing in me. But I'm just struck by the parallels for
Mm,
that. And what I'm hearing underneath that, Lauren, and this kind of like is a question for you, but it sounds like there were values that you have. I'm hearing like
hmm.
creativity, I'm hearing like impact, I'm hearing like making a difference, which were really important for you. And also, just a caveat, it sounds like you manifested CBC and potentially defined your own definition of success. What out of that might be true? Or what comes
Hmm.
up when I ask you that?
Yeah. Hmm. I was thinking as you were talking about, I think part of what I've realized over time is that just because someone gives you a bit of good advice and works with you and is nice to you does not mean that they are mentoring you. And I wonder if
Mm,
that's a crossover too, is that sometimes I think we can feel like this person is more senior than me. They do want to invest in me. They do have my interests at heart. If I do what they say, if I work hard, surely that is the right move. But sometimes people just want you to keep working hard. And I don't think it's actually necessarily conscious in the minds of the people who are your seniors or who are leading you. I don't think that they are doing this in a Machiavellian way. I don't think that it is intended to be exploitive, but let's face it, if you are really helping someone and doing great work for them or great work with them, it's actually not necessarily as rewarding to that person for you to be as rewarded or for you to rise where you're no longer in a position where you are contributing to their best interests. And I think I used to assume that everyone I met wanted to give me great advice and help me succeed, and that also lots of people will give you what they think is great advice, which is not necessarily true or not necessarily well founded. And so I've definitely learned over time to I love being the person who is, wide-eyed and in wonder in some ways, right? And thinking, what can I learn from this situation? Even someone who I may have something against, maybe I can learn from them, or maybe through observing them and observing my own reactions to them, maybe I can learn from that. But I've also realized there's a reason we have the term of taking it with a grain of salt, so to speak.
yes, and
Mm-hmm.
bringing it through your own discernment,
Yeah, and like you were saying, your own values.
your own
So
values.
So that seeing what was going on, and there were I just was realizing that it was causing my priorities to become out of whack. Partially because I was living in poverty. Like I literally was not in a very financially secure place. And I ended up, thankfully and luckily, building, I don't know if I would call it a parallel career. I was able to resolve that insecurity through learning and growing and doing too many different things, but they all they all came together. So I've been coaching voices since I was a teenager in various capacities and bringing people together and facilitating. And so I'd already been doing some of that. And so there were a number of twists and turns on the journey. I went to the Royal Conservatory. I did the Artist Educator Professional Training Program there. So I was doing artists in the classroom visits. I was mentoring teachers and using, for example, digital media arts in their classrooms. I was doing community work. So, for example, using digital storytelling, which is a digital media project, kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
narrated slideshow, but bringing together writing and sound and speech and visuals with people who were bereaved from from having a loved one die of cancer or living with cancer, with Gilda's Club. So that was working with someone who is a child life specialist or a social worker who's very well acquainted with the context in that social service context, but then bringing in artist facilitators, myself in some cases, to work together and to collaborate and to use media literacy and skill. Some of it was very skills based to just develop people's skills so that they can then do what they already have a desire for or express themselves and what's already there. It's not, sometimes we say things like empowering people to express themselves through the arts or celebrating the arts. And a lot of times it's just a little adjustment of context, a little bit of skills, offering space, offering some demystification. And it's not like I need to really inflate people for them to step forward. Like, people are already willing to be courageous if they're just given a little space and a little, we could say encouragement, encouragement and support, I guess I would say. And I was also working early childhood music, so singing to babies and families and seeing that really direct impact from that. And I helped develop early childhood curriculum, and I started working with cognitive neuroscientists that were researching the benefits of music for cognitive skills and for brain health in both aging populations, but also developing cognitive skills in young populations. So I think from this frustration that I felt the music industry was sort of somewhat self-absorbed. I mean, it sort of leads you to be self-absorbed because you're on this impossible path. It's a bit Sisyphus-like you're pushing the boulder up, but it's rolling back. And don't get me wrong, you can pursue that, and people who are
happy. It's just energy, right?
Great. It's a lot of energy, and so it can be challenging to do that and stay financially afloat and kind of be building all of this structure around yourself and your creativity and your creative output and your ability to perform, literally your ability to feel great driving from one lonely town in Canada through the snow to another lonely town and setting up all your gear and performing and not sleeping well and then doing it again. And how much can you survive that? How much are you just cut out for what is not ideal conditions for a human to be creating or connecting with other humans in? And so it's not like I just left that one day, but I was building kind of at the same time, and also, coaching voice one-on-one, teaching piano and ukulele and things like that too. And so I was seeing what people had said, again, you have so much potential. But then I was seeing, okay, if I do what you say and try to reach my potential, what is there really aren't any guarantees there. And there's a lot of pain in that direction. And I mean, it was a little more complicated than that. There were other things going on in my life, adding to my stress load around some family illness and grief and things like that. So I also wasn't super inclined to double down on investing in the struggle and kind of pushing in that direction, especially again, because I felt like I'd achieved some things I wanted to, and I did want to keep going in some ways. I felt like I owed the people who'd helped me my continuation of that dream. But I mean, at the time also, I felt like I had to try to achieve as much as I could before I was 25 or before I was 20 or whatever. It felt like, everything was on this, let's get the album out before you're 20. Okay. I mean, no one said those exact words to me, but in my mind, it was tied to high school. It felt like it should be wrapped up, and then, how much can you achieve in a short period of time, rather than thinking, okay, what can I do over 5 years? It was how can I pay the bills this month? How can I get what I want to done this year? And so I'd done this various facilitation work, had done some work with different arts organizations, facilitating, also working on some cool media products and some behind the scenes things, with video games and interactive film and things like that. And so I feel very lucky because I wouldn't have done all those things if it had not been for being in Toronto, making that album, not having financial security. So I felt so eager to try things out and to take risks and to really see what was possible. And then some of it was luck too, or good timing, being involved in the Royal Conservatory and then being asked to collaborate on some of these research projects or kind of building things up over time. So it was a pivot that led to this kind of a whole bunch of different amazing learning experiences kind of all taking place in this very kind of biodiverse selection of things that I was doing. And then I left it all. So then that was the next pivot, was I moved back up here to Owen Sound because I was realizing that what mattered to me, and in terms of values, I was thinking, wow, this is professional success beyond what I thought was possible, for sure. Like, I was just happy to be making a living in the arts, period. I did not think I would be able to do it in the ways I did it and with the kinds of collaborations I had. I felt very fulfilled. I felt so excited by the amount of impact I'd had. I'd had this very direct impact that, again, in comparison to I spent 3 years making my album, and I'm glad I did that. That's creating a collection of songs, and you don't know where it goes. You don't know where people are listening to it and what they are doing and what the impact is. You don't get to see and experience any of that, and you get some negative feedback too. And I got some particularly harsh feedback, which I'm kind of glad I heard. I got tons of positive feedback, but I got some feedback that was like borderline unkind. Like, I'm not sure if I would give that feedback to another person, from people who didn't have to put it that way. Let's say that. And again, like, through all this facilitation, don't get me wrong, there are times where I probably could have used some negative feedback for that too, because I was learning and growing. I wasn't necessarily always at the top of my game, but I knew I was reaching people. I knew I was connecting with humans, and if I was happy to go through the difficulties and the negative if there was negative feedback, sometimes not connecting, or sometimes wondering if I connected, or sometimes not knowing what to do in a given situation, or feeling frustrated, or questioning my impact. But I knew overall the balance of it was very positive, and that there was a lot of richness there. So I was soaking all that up, but realizing, okay, I'm still depleted though. I'm still living in a very expensive city. And when I have free time, I just want to disappear into the trees. I would walk in at first the Don Valley, because I lived right downtown. I was also really seeing the contradictions in not just the city. I mean, this is the world, but it was really in my face. The contradictions between different neighborhoods, different not just different, like different class groups or socioeconomic groups, or because that's very apparent, but also seeing how that divide looks different and functions differently in different places, in different neighborhoods, contradictions within education and within the school system and within arts organizations. And so I was rubbing up against some of these problems I saw, some of which were just personally painful to see other humans suffering, or to feel, like I was in this busy cityscape and not connecting to nature, and some of which were professionally frustrating or disheartening, or had some disillusionment, because I was excited to be as effective as possible, to reach people through music, through the power of creativity, and I saw things standing in the way of that. So as I was saying, I would go into the Don Valley and just walk for hours, or bike, just to be by the river and in the trees, and I'd still see the highway, I'd hear the cars in the Don Valley Parkway, but I felt so different. And then I moved out of downtown. I'd go into the Humber River Valley and do the same thing. And I'd be in the Humber River Valley, hanging out with the deer. And it was really, I live near Oakville, and it's a really wonderful, wonderful place to be able to explore that. I literally picked where I lived partially by looking at a map and looking for green space, and then seeing what was available close to the green space. And, I tried to be great at what I did. So I'd have bosses saying, stay a little longer. When I left, I actually had someone say, I'd urge you to reconsider. And, we've invested a lot in you. And I mean, on one hand, I'm thinking, if that's how you invest a lot in people, you might want to reconsider, like, how your process in that, and your expectations at the end of that. But also seeing, like, you think I'm in such a great place for fulfilling my potential, and I see there's so much more. Like, you're thinking, and also what what many of the people I was speaking to as I was leaving didn't know is I was also pregnant, and I wanted to buy a house and be near my parents. And as I was saying, very importantly, be near all the beautiful ecological wonders, really, that we have near here. I realized that I'd grown up in a place, I lived in Mississauga till I was 8. I think I had a little more appreciation for this area because of that, a little more. But as I got older, I really saw the difference. And I had worked with lots of babies and toddlers. And I knew that being around my parents, being in an area where I could go on hikes was really important to me. So I knew I was leaving. And I knew I wanted to be able to buy a house, which I couldn't in Toronto, which I felt incredibly lucky to be able to do it all, especially now. And so it was this interesting, I guess almost a dramatic irony of the people I worked with thinking, this is it for you. Like, you're at the top of your game. Like, you're at the pinnacle. But I saw that if I stayed there, the people who supported me, I shouldn't say the people who supported me to get there, not those who celebrate,
those who invested.
Who have invested and who have celebrated me being there, they just want me to stay there. They don't even want me to keep growing necessarily. I mean, maybe some of those folks did. This isn't personal towards them, but I'm saying that, like, in an organization, you're invested to get to a certain point, and that's where they want you to be. And I thought, like, that wasn't the end of my road. Like, I was very grateful for what I experienced, but I thought, okay, in 5 years, that's not where I'm looking to get, though. I'm still doing other things. And I mean, that pivot then coming up here, I mean, I definitely felt like I had to not exactly reach rock bottom, but it was tricky getting back into feeling strong about my career. After that, I took a maternity leave. I ended up starting my business after that. So I've been freelancing all this time. Some of it was underemployment, but a lot of it was freelancing and collaborations and working as a contractor. And then in 2017, after I'd had mat leave and I did a bit of arts administration work as general manager for a kids theater company. But then I started my business and started doing voice coaching, arts facilitation, workshops, community groups, early childhood music, things like that. And that was 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago. And I mean, that business itself has had its own pivots. I also became poet laureate around the same time as starting that business. And that was an adventure in and of itself. I went through some pretty extreme grief and even trauma. And I went through a separation with my eldest son's father. And so lots didn't go as planned after that. But since starting my business, it felt like a bit of a culmination of these pivots, and many pivots have happened since then. But it has also been a constant because I know where I am and who I am, and that I'm serving my community, even if that does change how it looks over time.
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful journey. And I just want to kind of connect some of the dots for people that could be listening, for how it, like, to take your context, but to connect back to their context. So when you were talking about, like, the shows you were traveling through from the cities, like driving through the snow, etc., to them, here's based on what I'm hearing from them, is like, that's the day of back-to-back meetings, same stuff. Right? It's just like, I got to go through the slog to get through the next thing.
Yeah.
And
I've done that too. Like, I've done back-to-back meetings. I've been the consultant like, where we're all on different pages, and I'm thinking, how are we all using our time so badly? Like, how how are we all so confused sitting here? You know, so I've been there on that.
Absolutely.
The less mobile, less exciting side of it too.
Well, and on the, like, the investment piece, like, when you do have, because I know this is very true, I have my own personal experience, like, we've invested in you. Yes. Mm-hmm. And what about the investment you're making in you? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what was the cost to you? Because what I'm hearing in your story is there were, like, nudges, or there's some intuition within you that was just like, well, this isn't it really. This isn't it really. This isn't it really. I'm not feeling like I know I want to be feeling. So the experience you were having, and then noticing those contradictions, which I was thinking about, like, silos in teams. Right? So we see that contradict. Well, things work really high performing over here, lower performing over here. Organizations, departments don't necessarily always talk to each other. And so the contradictions, I think, are all around us and worth noticing. right? Like worth
Mm-hmm.
noticing and thinking about, okay, what do I want to do with that? What could I learn from that?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I've heard, and don't let me put things on your story that aren't true, but it's like this is the power of owning your own career and creating, like, you made some really tough decisions there.
Mm-hmm.
And they lended itself to what was possible for you that came from your own lens, your own self, your own journey,
Mm-hmm.
and all of those pivots. It's like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
what's possible now?
Mm-hmm.
Versus what I do see quite a lot, and this is not necessarily good or bad, it's just different. But a lot of us as humans and as leaders, we put our faith, I guess I would use that word, put our faith or our confidence in those mentors or guides or sponsors that can help us get where we want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, where are you in all of that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I had experiences where I was less invested in than I thought, like where I
Of
thought there
course.
was more growth potential. And then I realized I was not favored and that I was down the list and that I don't know if I would ever get to the point where I would be favored and where those opportunities would materialize. And also times where like I didn't know I was being invested in, and then later I'm told we've invested in you. I think, did you? Where there wasn't it was where other people had a vision for where I was going, and I mean this has even happened with like friends who are mentorly friends, where they think, oh, it'd be so
Yes.
amazing if you could do this, and I say, no, I'm not doing that. But there's been times though where it has been that other people I'm working with have an idea for where things could go for me, and they don't tell me. So I'm not on the same page about there being about what the future could look like.
Yes.
And
What a
and this
missed
is
opportunity.
totally because if I'm brought into the loop, I can help plan. I can help plan and like add fuel to that too. And this happens as an entrepreneur also, like and collaborating with organizations, especially. What's been interesting in my business is that it's sort of been B2B in the sense that I'm often collaborating with an organizational institutional partner, sometimes to deliver training that is internal, but sometimes to do outward facing things. And then sometimes I've been working direct with, as more of a B2C role. I mean, now I even think to myself, when I'm working directly with an entrepreneur, is that B2B because they're hiring me because I am going to help them get results that are business focused. I am, they can develop IP, they can improve their sales, they can improve their professional skills. Like you can write that off as professional development. Like this is definitely professional, but I'm also thinking, they're also an individual and I'm going to be helping them so much on an individual level. And we might go into things that aren't professionally related. Like, is this business to business still, or is this more about reaching the individual? And there's been times collaborating that I think there's a vision, like with an organization or something. And I think we are on the same page going forward. And sometimes wires still get crossed. It's still a work in progress.
It
But
still
I think
happens.
I think that's been something I've had to learn and grow and cultivate. I think, to be honest, I was under so much stress for a while that I just wasn't really, I thought I was thinking of the future by like freaking out and obsessively looking at job listings, even though I had enough work. And I thought that was me planning for my future, was like just obsessively taking Coursera courses. Even though, again, I was like gainfully employed, but I felt, or contracted, but I was like, I need to invest in myself. I need to invest in myself. But I wasn't visioning long term or kind of creating that bigger values-based investment. And like those Coursera courses were great, don't get me wrong, but I think I wasn't necessarily building it with that kind of confidence. And when I left Toronto and I moved up to Owen Sound, like I thought I might be a receptionist working for slightly above minimum wage. I didn't actually think I'd be starting my own business. I didn't think I'd be working in the same industry. Like I thought I was basically giving it all up, so to speak, and starting at ground zero. Like for some
Mm.
reason, I had this perception that none of the skills I'd developed would carry with me, and that like none of that experience would be useful to anyone outside of a big city. And I mean, that wasn't entirely my idea. That was partially what was being communicated to me. but I see now how like and I mean, I also was having my first child. I wasn't thinking entrepreneurship. I was thinking how do I be safe? How do I deal
The
with,
hierarchy of needs, right?
yeah, how do I deal with what's actually going on around me? I also, shortly after my son was born, my stepsister passed away when she was 18 after years of being in the hospital. And then I actually had a cat attack. My friend's cats attacked my son and I while I was holding him. And those happened about a month apart. And at the time, I thought, I'm fine. Like, I I just had a baby. I'm fine. I just experienced some loss, but I kind of knew it was coming. I'm fine. I just had this like intense, like literally traumatic, like literally stitches in my face
Mm-hmm.
situation, but I'm fine because we weren't seriously hurt. Like, all of this is clearly okay. I'm handling everything, right? This is totally all right. And then,
The female story and lie to ourselves. We're fine.
yeah, yeah. But I see now how I wanted to be fine because I didn't want anyone to worry. I didn't want the fuss. I was like, I just have to get through this. But I see now how I couldn't really vision for myself for the future because I understand now that I had really limited, compared to today, I had limited cognitive capacity because I was under so much stress, not to mention hormones, but that these big stressors, as much as I could say they were okay, they were still impacting my brain and my ability to be creative and feel confident and feel calm and decisive and to create that future. So I definitely I must have had some of that because I did all those things before, but I had to kind of build it up again in a new way. And I think that's been challenging, but I think ultimately going from, okay, I'm giving everything up because I need to be somewhere else. I
Mm-hmm.
need things to be different. All that was amazing, but I'm moving forward to something new and then kind of rebuilding. I today, and that's not to say I figured it all out. There's still those ups and downs, but today I feel so much more able to get through some of those difficult times and to be able to actually experience and feel some of those difficult emotions and discomfort more
Mm-hmm.
without it being everything's falling apart. It's that I'm riding a wave and that I'm still on my mission. I'm still me. I'm still doing my things without um, shutting down or being overly activated, being able to be more in the middle.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's what's coming up in my mind is one of the touch points we had before we began this call, which is around like other people's view of us in the context of like, you can be nervous and other people can see an entirely different side of you.
Mm-hmm.
As you were going through all of that stress, people probably saw like you were like, it's fine. And it probably looked fine to
Mm-hmm.
other people, but it didn't feel fine for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I'm curious, Lauren, if you would kind of share with leaders, like, I know for you, like that long-term vision around impact is really important. And also, I would love it if you would talk about what tips or tricks or tools that they might glean from your experience. And I'm just wrapping up and capturing my thought here.
Mm-hmm.
Tying in the nervousness from a like being who they are as leaders, because a lot of the people that listen to this particular podcast are incredibly high performing. They want to do a great job. They will do a lot of hours to get the things done that they've, been asked to do or that they put on themselves to do. So that strong sense of responsibility. I feel like you resonate strongly with that type of behavior, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
I want to do a good job. I want to create a good future for myself and have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them about that journey of that experience? How did you
Mm.
choose?
How did I choose? Did you
How
say?
did you choose? Yeah,
Tell
because
me.
it
Yeah, tell
seems
me
like
more.
there were two like going on within you. It's kind of like I'm doing all of the things that's being asked of me. People are investing in me, I'm investing in me. And there was this other piece of you that wanted the serenity of nature, a different way, different possibilities, fulfillment, impact, dare I say joy, right? So the two kinds of things were happening within you at the same time. And I'm just curious, like, how did you decide for yourself which path Lauren wanted?
Well, I mean, this is still something I'm figuring out. And I think part of what I've learned is that it is me deciding, in the
Amen.
sense that I mean, I think part of me thought that if I left the city behind, I left the stresses behind,
Yes,
that I would have this fresh start, that things would be different, that whatever, right? And not only did that create a lot of pressure on myself for how everything looked for it to be different, and that was turned on its head right away. Actually, the day before I moved, I actually had another so this was 6 months before, a bit beyond that. Within the same year as my stepsister passing away, another close friend passed away. And I didn't know she'd passed away because we didn't have friends in common. We were close, but we didn't have any mutual friends to tell me. And I knew she was battling cancer, but I just, we just hadn't talked in a couple of weeks. I was packing up my place, right? And so I found out she'd passed away when I was in the vet's office, pregnant, moving to Owen Sound the next day. And I'm looking at my phone in the vet's office because my puppy was sick, which was also incredibly stressful. As I was moving, trying to help my puppy, that was, again, also a young puppy, and she ended up being fine. But it was, it wasn't a we can wait and see kind of situation. And I find this out about my friend passing away, and we're in the vet's office, and I get the medication, and I leave, and I also ordered the wrong size moving trucks. So my partner at the time drove up the moving truck with half of our stuff and drove back. And so I'm alone crying and packing and just, I'm trying to make this big, beautiful transition. And here I am. And it's like, I knew I was holding it together, but it was a bit of a WTF moment, right? It's definitely probably the worst packing I've ever done. Some family members luckily helped me finish that, the next day. But even the actual move itself, even things like, the house closing and the mortgage, things that went wrong, like there were just so many bumps on that road. And again, those things, there were a lot of lessons in that, but things were still so tough for a few years. And that, there were ups and downs, and there were things that went great professionally, but realizing that I have more of a choice in how I know I mentioned earlier about, there's times where we have grief and we just have to, it's going to take time. We can't think ourselves out of that. There are like physiological reactions to grief and trauma that take time. I used to really resent the word healing, but I get it now. I get that that trauma is like an injury to our brain, and it's something that can change and heal over time. And I mean, I've had some physical injuries to heal too. And, I broke my foot and it did heal over time, but I've also rehabilitated it over time. Like I've also put effort into that. And I have a little story that might sort of illustrate what I've realized over time. And I think before also I was hoping that the right employer or the right big client collaborator would sort of take away all my woes. That if I could find the right, I'll come back around to the story, which is a more present day story. If I could find the right employer, I'd look through these jobs, and the right employer, that would fix all my financial woes, but also they would be better than I am at making impact. And so then I would make better impact because they would be better equipped to help me deliver that. And because I think that was sometimes true in the relationships I had, but especially being a business owner, of course, there are many benefits to collaborating, to being coached, to having people on your team. But I've realized, it's not about me waiting for the right opportunity to save me, right? Or if I can just find the right circumstance, the right person to hire me, like that's where I can really make impact. That it's about, deciding the kind of impact I want to make. And it's not just about saying yes, it's about being willing to continue forward, despite the challenges. So there's been times in my business where I've worked with a lot of kids, and there are lots of fun things about that. I was very trained to do that. I felt very appreciated. You know, I'm a parent myself, so I understand as a parent how much that means. I could see the results in front of me. I was, trying to do things that I considered to be innovative, because music education itself, there's a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of achievement orientation, a lot of tradition that doesn't necessarily serve us if our goals are, well, really, most of the goals you'd think were there, it often doesn't serve, including actual skill development. It's not always what we think is the road to skill development musically, which we might call musicality or musicianship, or even what's called audiation, which is thinking in music. That is not always served by what we think the role is. And one, I found out I was coming up against society's expectations of what music education is, and the clients I'm working with, what they think success means, or when and why we should get children to perform. How important is it to get children to memorize something and then act perfectly once for 2 minutes on a stage? How much time do we really want to spend, and how much is that really helping the kids or even anyone else in the room? Again, I'm not against performances, but what's the balance? Is it
great
that?
Questions?
And how much, what's the point of declining returns? Because that 2-minute performance versus a 10-minute or 20-minute performance, what's worth it? Anyway, I could go on and on about music education, but I was feeling this friction, right? And I was also realizing that the background I'd had around professional development, around working with adults, around working with either people developing their professional capacities as facilitators, as teachers, but also around adults building themselves up personally. So literally their cognitive skills. So that means the sort of building blocks that help us perceive and organize information. So music targets a bunch of those. There's executive function and perception and memory, and we can improve all these like muscles. And there's so many, the emotional benefits too, the social and emotional benefits that people can experience by having this tool that helps them feel better. That not only can increase their effectiveness, increase their expressiveness, increase these things we want, our ability to connect to other people and make the things happen we want to happen, but to also help our experience and help us actually enjoy our own experience. And I saw that there's this tension between all the yeses I was giving to working with kids and doing all this community work and, and doing sliding scale work and doing all this work that I did feel valued for. I was what I was trained for. I was doing things that I knew had a righteousness about them, but maybe too much righteousness. I was leaning too much on this is the right thing to do to bring this music to the children, and I saw a tension around, okay, if I keep just saying yes to all the people who think they want me to teach their 6-year-old piano until they decide they don't want it anymore, versus it can be a little more effort to help adults understand the impact of music, and not just music, but voice work. When I say music, again, people think it's a music lesson, but I mean exploring sound, creating more awareness around our body, which I think most people would agree is important, but our voice is central to how we are communicating. Most people are using their voice to make their money. They're either they're selling, they're working directly with clients, they're working with their team or with their organization, with their superiors. We're all rare is the person who gets to just write, and then you're still dealing with it because it's still your internal voice, your tone, your writing voice, it's still there. And so it's a little more work helping adults overcome their fear. People tell me all the time about their insecurities and fears and dramas and childhood traumas around their voice. People will tell me, I was told as a child to mouth the words and things like that. Often really quickly, people will tell me these things. So it can be a little more work to overcome that, but I know I can help people so much. And if I increase people's professional capacity, they can be more effective in their mission. And so I can better help a room full of teachers in a professional development workshop go back to their classrooms and, bring that into their work with hundreds of children by the time that ripples out, where I have had weeks where I see hundreds of children myself. But I realized I couldn't, if I was the one running the business and not just freelancing, these were two different businesses, a business for children and families and a business for adults that is much more focused on the professional sphere. And now on things like podcasting and media products. And I recognized I can't do both here. So where is the like purpose-driven or mission-driven choice? Like if it really is about righteousness in the world, which that's a whole other discussion of like what we think is right versus what is really right for us. But if it's really about like doing good in the world, I can't just say yes to everyone and just let like what I stumble into be what creates results for me. I want to make a conscious choice around that, and around who I'm reaching and how I'm reaching them. And I'll just pause. I only answered part of your question.
That's okay. I think what would be, oh, go ahead. I see you.
Tips. I was going to say you were talking tips. Yes.
Tips.
Okay, so I will get into a present day story and then try to like rapid fire a bunch of tips. And I am looking to address some of these things on my own show too. So if there are things we don't get to today, I'm happy to come back on your show and talk more too. But if there are lingering questions, I will record answers to them.
Well, and this is just a plug for like, so your Lauren's Best podcast. It's a plug to go and listen to that, because there was an episode, I think it was this week, on influence. And I think like there's just a lot of goodness there that listeners can, anybody can benefit from.
And, you know, the story I was going to tell, I think I touch upon a little in that episode. And that was that I realized I was stressed out about my own deadlines that I'd created. And so that was kind of it's a little more contextualized though in our conversation right now, is that, you know, for so many years I thought, well, I must be stressed about that deadline because the person who said it was so unrealistic. Or I must be stressed about that deadline because this team is not working cohesively. And if it was just, you know, me with a team I was managing, I think we'd be fine. But this did not make sense. And that's why it's a problem, you know, whatever. Or I just have so much on my plate. That's why I'm stressed about it. It's all the things that are so beyond my control. But I realized, I thought, oh, I am stressed about this deadline. I feel the stress in my body. I can tell that I'm physically getting tense, but I'm getting cranky. I'm getting snarky with myself. I'm making mistakes, partially because I'm like kind of in this rammy, almost rushing. I made some kind of big mistakes actually, which, I mean, it was efficient. I didn't spend too much time thinking about things, but I just went for it and made some mistakes. And I realized, okay, this is all me. I'm the one working. There's no one telling me how much to work. I'm not in anyone else's office. There's no one else in charge of the atmosphere around me. There's no one else in charge of whether I take a break, whether I have a snack, how hydrated I am. I could do the rest of this work from my bathtub if I really wanted to. I didn't. Too risky with the electronics. But I realized that not only was I in control of all the circumstances, which entrepreneurship, it's kind of funny. I feel like entrepreneurship in many ways was me wanting more ability to influence the direction and more, I don't want to say control, but autonomy is part of it, in order to serve it my best.
Absolutely.
I mean, partially because freedom is also, it's great. My son said he liked camp because I basically have free will there. That's what he said. And, you know, we have that. We want to be able to exert our creativity and our influence, but it's also about effectiveness. It's kind of funny that journey of entrepreneurship has led me to realize that it wasn't freeing myself from circumstances that allows that. It was how I interact with myself in the circumstances that allows that. So anyhow, I realized not only was I in control of everything, I was literally in control of the actual deadline. And it was 100% up to me if I even just moved the deadline. And so I thought, well, I might as well try to enjoy myself because, like, for all these reasons, like, I don't have to have an experience of stress and anger and this. And I mean, I can feel that, but what do I actually want this to be like? What's my desire? What's my purpose in doing this show? But also, like, what is my desire for myself today? You know, if I was sitting next to someone or if I like come out of my body and I'm watching myself work, like what do I want for her? Because do I want her to be stressed out? You know, if I, sometimes I think if I was the boss and I was my own employee, like would I want my employee to be, you know, huffing and puffing and not taking breaks and just going at it and not like refreshing and thinking, oh, it's okay. I don't need to approach it in this way.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of a big tip, but it's not always easy to do. So I mentioned a few things though within that, like literally just taking a little break and not thinking I have to get it done, I have to get it done, but just taking the moment to pause. Pause is one of my words for the year.
I love it.
And actually, I thought middle was one of my words, which it is. It was a surprise word. I thought, middle? What does that mean? But I so get it now. Pause and middle, you know, because if I'm too lackadaisical about it, that doesn't necessarily serve me. Or if I'm, you know, that can look like even like fatigue, brain fog, and almost like sleepiness about it. There's also sometimes that means though there's been times where I've been like that and I need to up my iron and sleep more and eat more. And, you know, sometimes those are signs too. Or like too intense, too going hard, that can look angry and think, oh, the anger is motivating me, but like, is it really? Is it really making me more effective? Is it really getting me to where I want to go? It can look like frustration. It can look like excitement, but too much excitement.
Polarities.
Yeah, and that
right?
coming more to the middle of that, which to me also means physically. A lot of times I love to connect with my feet. That's a great strategy, right? Is like remembering our toes, remembering our feet, and breathing into our, even into our pelvic floor. Or with singing, there can be a lot of vibration and sensation up here. So we can really pay attention up here to some of that, right? And that's also something I recommend is doing a little singing, doing a little humming, doing a little yawning even. It can be just sliding around things you don't consider music, like woo, 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 or an hey. Things like that can help relax us, can help get us into a creative flow state, even just imagining some of those things. And I can talk more about some of those little tips, but part of that is finding some of the middle in it, you know? And so it can be really exciting up here when we sing. Sometimes I can want to drop really far down, but I need to consider my middle, where my ribs actually expand. I spent years as a singer not knowing that my ribs moved and not knowing that I had muscles that could influence my rib movement. And having physiotherapy after pregnancy, I regained a lot of rib movement. And I had clothes that I used to wear that my weight didn't change. My weight was exactly the same, but I had to give away the clothes because my rib expansion was so much greater that when my ribs would move when I was really breathing, the clothes were restricting my rib expansion. And I used to wear them to work and not worry about that at all. And it wasn't that my ribs changed size like at their smallest. It was that I had more movement in my ribs. So remembering some of that middle and not allowing myself to be too far in one direction or another, and leading with the body, with embodiment, with some of the physiology. I talked a lot about like sort of imagining what would I want for myself and kind of setting it up from a mindset basis or from a framing basis. And of course that's important, because if I lead with physiology and still have a mindset that's not working, you know, if I take that break and try to fix it physiologically, but I'm still putting all this pressure on myself, that may not work either. But it's amazing what a difference it makes. Doing things like going for a walk, especially outside, getting some real muscle activation and blood flowing and pumping, things like power posing. I'm not sure. Have you talked about that on the show? I bet you have.
Actually, I haven't on the show, but let's do it now.
Yeah, so power posing, and there's a TED talk around this. So things like hands behind the head or hands up over the head. I love hands up over the head because it's a natural yawn. I tell people to pretend they are yawning, even if they don't really yawn.
I
But
remember this exercise, Lauren.
yeah, you can also just stand with your hands up, which tends to open your ribs. You tend to breathe better. When we raise our hands up over our head or behind our head, or hands on hips can be okay, but I think we can do even better by, you can do arm circles. You can just wave your hands around and dance if you feel up to it, but it could just be some kind of yawning type motions. And it reduces cortisol levels. Our body recognizes you must feel confident. You're not guarding yourself. You're not hyperventilating. You're breathing deep. You're raising your arms. You must be safe. You must be powerful. And our brain decreases our stress levels, which stress is not always bad. Another thing I mentioned on my show is that if you think stress is bad, it will impact you badly. And if you think it helps you perform better, it will help you perform better.
Yes,
But
thoughts become things.
yeah, the power posing helps decrease some of what's going to hold us back. And they've shown that people perform better in mock job interviews, even with
100%.
power posing for 2 minutes.
This is what I do with a lot of my career growth clients or my clients that are like going for interviews and things like that, like taking a couple minutes and wherever they feel comfortable to do it, just taking that pose. Right.
Yes,
And
totally.
I was reminded of like Superman and Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
I'm aging myself.
Well, and the yawn is great because it tends to open up our faces too. Well, we automatically breathe really deeply when we yawn. Sometimes breathe too deeply, but breath work is maybe a conversation for another day. Breath work can really depend on the person and what you need.
Yes.
Because again, if you're too high or too low, you don't necessarily need breath work to take you further in either of those directions. But really stretching our faces, things like lion, where we breathe with our tongue out and our eyes really wide. And then like a lemon face where you're like scrunching up your own face, just literally.
So listeners, just so you know, we're doing this together. You can't see us.
And the scrunches up of the face. And so you're getting your lymphatic system draining. You're getting just some blood flow happening in your face. You can imagine like you get a little extra blood flow in the face and you look more alive to people. You have more blood in your face. And you can self-massage for this. You can do lots of other things for blood flow. But it really makes a difference. And for years, I would not really, I was worried about my facial expression being too intense because again, not too far, especially working with very young children, I would make silly faces for these young kids, right? Like even today, if I see a baby, I know how to look at a baby in the eyes and just look a little amused in my face, and then they start smiling because I can just kind of catch the vibe with them. But I would make these really intense smiling facial expressions, and when I saw it on in pictures, I thought I look scary, like I look weird. That's too much. And actually, the cat attack itself, I had stitches in my lip, and I literally tried to have no facial expression for a couple weeks while they were healing because I was so afraid of breaking the stitches and being scarred for life, which in retrospect was not a reasonable fear, but I was so worried about it. And I was just kind of also just like shut down and flooded on a nervous system level. And getting more expressiveness in my face through actually being on video in times like this, but also through actual exercises. So I did myofunctional therapy, which is more than we want to get into now. I'm sure there's myofunctional therapists who would love to talk to you though, but it's sort of like physiotherapy for the facial and oral muscles. And that was related to a tongue tie for me, but I found what it did for my expressiveness and therefore my ability to connect with people was a really unexpected benefit. And things like smiling with our eyes, what a difference it makes when we smile with our eyes towards someone versus if you have no expression in kind of from the nose up, which again, that can just be because we've trained ourselves, because we've Botoxed ourselves, because
we're in our heads.
Because we're in our heads and we can go from the body. So if you look in the mirror and you give yourself a smile with your eyes and you make some silly faces and maybe you do the silly lion and lemon just to break the tension. But if you start thinking of people you love, so it's like a mischievous look almost. It can either be like an, you're making me laugh kind of look with the eyes, but it can also be like a, or for some people it's like a bite of something delicious, or like you're relaxing on the beach, like a, right? So if you give yourself the opportunity to tap into those real emotions, even if you're not totally there, but you have a bit of, I know what it feels like to feel warm and content. And I know what it feels like, even if I'm stressed, to connect with someone who makes me laugh. And so tapping into that physically changes our brain. It's so helpful. And so you can sort of fake it till you make it. One, for your own experience, right? Because it can change your brain.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading a study. I remember the words physiological smiling increases brain activity. Like basically a fake smile still helps your brain. So you can get to that through the body in some ways, but you're also tapping into those real emotions. And from there, from that experience, and you'll start to develop it as a habit where it's easier to give people those smiling, loving looks with your eyes. I used to not look at people that way, and now I realize people feel that you like them, and that is important. People want you to know, like, and trust them, not just the other way around. And if they
Mm.
know, like, and trust you, but when you talk to them, your face is motionless because you've practiced having a motionless face, which I understand. Like, we don't want to have too much expression if we're in a meeting or, or on camera or something. But we can actively cultivate on a really physical level that expression we want, and of course, like through sound as well, and move it more in the direction we're going for.
I love that. And I think it's so, here's the kind of lens I'm going through it. It's like really learning how to be yourself,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And allowing that connection. I feel like that was a mic drop moment when you said, know, like, and trust. That's not only about them liking you, but you liking them. Like people, we're all humans.
Yeah. And I think they want us to know, like, and trust ourselves too.
Yes.
And like the cringe is so real. Like I still cringe. I still worry about stuff. Before we started pressing record, I was telling you about a time where I was recently, very recently, where I was so worried about something I did on camera, and then I watched back and it wasn't even a problem. And meanwhile, I'd gone through this whole thing of I can accept that mistake I made. Okay, I've learned from it. All right, I'm going to watch it and see if there's anything else I can learn. And then I watched and it was fine. It was totally fine. But I think
Perception.
yeah, I think the difference is that I used to really cringe hard I would still show up, I would still facilitate this and that, but like it was very hard for me to like myself on camera and like myself facilitating. And it's still a little tricky. I still see things I want to improve. It's still not quite the same as someone else, but through time, I've been able to trust myself more, to genuinely like what I'm doing more, and to I think the no is a key part of that. If you never watch yourself on video, not only will you probably judge yourself more harshly, and it doesn't have to just be video. This can also mean audio recordings. This can even be photos, right? But
Yep.
not only will you probably judge yourself more harshly, we always do, or we focus on something about our appearance no one else is paying attention to, right? But just gaining that familiarity, it helps. And it helps us be more accurate and actually learn, but also have better humor about ourselves. Sometimes we do silly things and we can laugh at that too.
What I'm hearing there is like evaluate, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
as you're going along your journey, not comparing in a negative way, but actually being evaluative, curious,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what really would I want to change the next time that I do this as I continue to iterate the person that I am
Yes.
today, right? There's that
Yeah.
evaluative piece. And also there's a piece of just allowing,
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself to go there with a couple of tools.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Yeah.
even when you were talking about like watching yourself on video or recording. So even for those listeners that are like planning some interview or getting ready for a promotion, like actually doing that with yourself, videoing or recording and playing it back can help you that with that self-perception piece. Right? So there's how I see myself and how I think other people see me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's a difference there, but it can help you get really clear on you and how
Mm-hmm.
you see you, your own
Yeah.
efficacy,
Yeah.
right? Your own sufficiency, your own enoughness,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
the stories we're telling ourselves can sometimes be helpful, but sometimes not helpful.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it's about being discerning. Like we want to be curious, have some problem solving, but I keep repeating this quote from another podcast episode, and I'll send you the link, which is that, it was a performance coach that works with like PGA Tour golfers, and what's even better than learning from something is being able to laugh at it. I mean, you do want to learn from it, but you can learn from something and still it can be very heavy. But if you can have good humor about it, that's a cut above learning from it. And you can learn from it too, but learning from it doesn't necessarily mean that you're approaching
that feels
it,
bad.
From a place of curiosity. And you'll find you can break things down a lot more than you think. So people will say, you aren't going to make me sing. People say that kind of thing to me, right? But what if you just move a little? What if we just laugh? That's using your voice. What if we just hum? What if we yawn? What if we make sound? We can get so much of that without getting to the really hard part. But if I make you sing like that, that'll be okay too. What is even the problem there? When it comes to something like evaluating your speaking or on video, it helps to break it down too. So a great tip is watch yourself with the sound off, listen to yourself with the video off, see what you notice separately as well as together, because there might just be little things that are little fixes that you won't necessarily notice with it all together. You can think about just adjusting your tech and only the tech without improving anything about yourself or like your performance of it. Sometimes just adjusting the tech is going to make it so much easier for you, or better sounding, like literally be able to hear more of yourself, or maybe the setup's better, that your performance is better. Or just evaluating your performance and you realize, oh, when I thought it was really bad and I was having that sinking feeling, it wasn't even bad. How much is that going to change your performance? We haven't even improved anything about what you've done. We've just made it a more accurate evaluation of what's going on, so that now when I have a sinking feeling, that does not mean I did something wrong. When I'm sweaty and my heart is pounding, which actually happens to me, sometimes before I go on stage or before I introduce myself to two people in a Zoom call, or, it can sometimes happen unexpectedly. And that physiological reaction is not a sign that I'm scared. It's a sign that my body is going through something very normal, which will re-regulate in time, and that what we tell ourselves about it is part of the battle, And I certainly, when I was having my facial expression challenges, right, that would have been hard for me to hear. Me being really critical about myself then was not necessarily the answer, because I might have been even harder. I know I was even harder on myself than I needed to be, but it was still worth being curious about that and improving that over time. Because it didn't mean I was like piling on myself right away, but through taking the time with that, it really has been able to change. I've been able to change my vocal posture, so to speak, and my actual tongue posture, my actual body posture. So I want everyone to know that they can worry a little less, but improve a little more than they think.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's like, here's what I'm hearing there is, it's a series of tiny tweaks, not wholesale changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, love yourself through it.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
Beating yourself up. I mean, just the visual that goes with that language of beating yourself up versus loving yourself through it, or gentle kindness, whatever, resonates, because both experiences are available. And we tend to choose the one that feels the worst.
Yeah. And
until we learn that, by the way, it's totally our own doing and we can choose again.
Yeah. And it's a lifelong journey. Like we get to have our voices with us for our lifetimes. And that's for the sound, like the physical vibration that you get to give yourself whenever you want. What other people think aside, you have that capacity at almost any time. People do lose their voices sometimes, but basically it's always there for you, right? And the storytelling aspect. We're never done learning about the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell other people. The story keeps unfolding, and something like, we don't have brand messaging in a box that's all tied up, and then for the whole lifetime of the company, we never have to look at the brand messaging again. For ourselves, our physical voices, but the messages we deliver, how we deliver them, like all of that keeps evolving. So I think when you're investing in something for a lifetime of returns, it's a much different feeling than we're trying to fix something and have it just be done with. Just we don't have to worry about it anymore because I just want to fix that problem. But it's
Yeah.
more like getting into a whole new world of possibilities. We're not just fixing something and closing the door. We're opening a door.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Lauren, any last words for the audience?
Well, I love to hear from people. So if any of this resonated with you, please let me know. If you are feeling like friction about some things I said, if you're like, I disagree, or I want to know more about that, I would love to hear what was evocative, and I would love to continue the conversation with you, Cynthia, and with your listeners. So I'd love to
Absolutely.
be in touch. My Substack, laurenbest.substack.com, and you can find my podcast, Lauren's Best, there. I'm on Instagram by Lauren Best. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I love to connect. I love to hear from you.
Is it okay that we hook up all of that stuff in the show notes for people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll make sure we have all the links.
Absolutely.
And I'll link the Infinite Improvisation podcast too. I'll send you the link for that because there's some good like instructional how-to creative exploration, which we didn't talk as much about today. So if you're like, okay, I get this, but what do I do next? We'll make sure we have some links for you to have lots of ideas for where to go.
I love it. And I love the fact that you said, like, bring the resistance. We can work through it.
Yeah.
Lauren,
learn.
This has been an absolute pleasure.
For me too.
To get to know you, to spend some time with you. And I so look forward to, I will probably see you in person soon. Mm-hmm. But I look forward to continuing our relationship.
I look forward to it too. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
You are welcome. Hey there, it's Cynthia. Thanks for being a part of the Who Are You to Lead Anyway journey. Join my newsletter for exclusive updates and resources. Get a complimentary self-discovery workbook at www.cynthiajamesoncoach.ca. Your feedback shapes this show, so share your thoughts. And if you love the podcast, help spread the word. Thanks for investing in your leadership growth. Let's thrive together.